Well, thanks for joining us today on the fun and mentals of real estate. I think we might have a little fun today, but I don't know. We might be a little mental on you, so apologies in advance, right? I'm your host today here, Angela Dillmon with the Dillmon Group at Keller Williams Realty, Chesterfield. And this is my wealth building partner,
Glen Calvin, Guild Mortgage.
Yeah, and this is our wonderful buyer's agent,
Yes.
Josh Gulledge. He's again with us today as we
having
wind
us.
our way through the buying process. So, we are here today to help you build wealth.
Live your dream lifestyle.
And leave legacies that
That's
matter.
what we're here for. All right, super good. So we've been talking about John, our buyer today. We've been in the last few podcasts, and he's already been to see you.
Yes.
Right? And we've done our
Pre-approved,
loan
looked at the
scenario.
numbers, right?
All right. And now John knows what his payment's going to be, what price point that fits into that payment, right?
Right, and talk about fun. This is the fun. We're getting ready to start looking at houses and really move this process along. And
Yeah.
this is, to me, it's exciting and fun.
It's exciting and fun all at the same time. So what's our question of the day, though, Glenn?
You know, the question of the day is we're late in 2024. Why is it that some houses are going super fast, multiple offers, over asking price, and others are sitting and doing price reductions? What is that difference?
Ooh, that's a good question
Great
of the
question.
day. And it does dovetail into what our next piece of the buying process is. After you've talked with Glenn and you know your price point and you know the cash needed to close, now we're going to hook you up on a Zoom with Josh. And Josh is going to give you some background on the market, right? So first tell me, on the buyer's Zoom, why is it so important? What are you going to cover? And why is it important to have this meeting before you just jump in the car and go to look at houses?
Yeah, so it's, again, super important because we, baby steps to getting to the end goal. But it really allows me to just explain the market to everybody, right? So I can go over the market, what's going on, and, then I always break it down into 4 phases, and that would be phase 1. And then I talk a little bit about, the group and how we specifically help you over just any other given agent. Then we get into the more fun part of, what are you looking for a home? I'll click through some photos, and then, really dig into that. And then finally, I just talk about how you're represented by an agent.
Okay, so if we don't have this groundwork laid, and I just jump in the car and I go start looking at homes, and I'm like, oh, I really like this one, and you're like, oh man, there's going to be 10 offers on that thing, and you're like, what? What's going on?
Yeah.
Right? So the first pillar of this is just figuring out what the market's doing right here, right in St. Louis, right now. And that's the important thing. Everything you hear is wrong because everything you hear is national news.
Yeah.
And right now, in national news, the average time on market, like the months of inventory, are over 4 months. But here in St. Louis, 2 months.
Yeah.
Right? So local matters, right? So tell me, how do you open up to start talking about the market? What's the context of the market?
Yeah, so again, we always start, broad. And then by the time we get into step 3 and look what you're looking for in a home, we'll get more hyper local, right? Even in St. Louis, there's different pockets that sell faster and stronger. It's just different markets, even based on zip code. So,
Josh, I know people are getting a lot of advice from their friends and from their parents, and I've heard Angie mention this before. This is a market that nobody's seen. This is different.
yeah, and I know Angela mentions it too, and I relay it as well. I mean, if you haven't bought a home in the last 3 years, you don't really know somebody that's gone through the market.
You don't understand this market if you haven't bought in the last 3 to 4 years. You really do not, and neither do your parents or your grandparents or your aunts or your uncles or your friends. And that's just why this conversation is so
And
important.
truly, even then, I mean, we say it all the time. Good agents keep their finger on the pulse of the market. I mean, this market moves weekend to weekend. Is it a holiday weekend? Is it what quarter are we in? I mean, we were just talking about it earlier. Sometimes there's just lulls in the market that, even agents that have been in the business a long time, they're not actively selling almost every weekend. They wouldn't even feel the slowdown.
Right.
They wouldn't feel it. But I always start big, right? So I talk about, hey, we crashed in 08.
Yes.
So
I went through that, by the way.
we
I did
took
too. Yeah, we were in that together. It was
Yes.
crazy. There was a lot of activity, almost a frenzy, and then it just
And
died.
then it's just like walking off a cliff. Yeah.
Right.
So that sets groundwork of, hey, this is where we were. Everybody was gun shy. It stopped building for years. I mean, everybody went out of business. But then just supply and demand naturally catches us back up, right? So 2013, we started climbing that hill of appreciation. So every year over year, homes were worth more money. And that train was really picking up speed.
And one of the things causing it to pick up speed was the drop in interest rates. We saw the interest
Yeah,
rates.
they were
kept coming
intentionally
down,
holding
lower and
down.
lower, right?
They were intentionally holding down rates real low.
Right.
And then, COVID happened, right? And you talk about just taking a fuel canister and chucking it on the fire. I mean, it created mass movement, and at the same time, the feds were just like drop interest rates to almost nothing, and
Yeah,
so
it was
people
incredible.
could move for political reasons. They could change counties, but especially the big one is people were working from home,
That's
Work
huge,
from
isn't
home.
it? Yes.
and they could no longer have their toddlers screaming in the background of their Zoom call.
Right.
And a lot of jobs, they were very secure. Like they worked
Right.
for financial institutions or tech companies,
Yes.
and they had to have private rooms with even locks on them. So
It's true.
it just created so much movement in the marketplace. So that's where we were, and again, we all saw the effects of lowering interest rates and prices climbing. Inflation got really bad.
Right.
Prices of eggs and milk went up, and so the feds were like, "Okay, we're slowing this down." And so they had to do the opposite of what they did. They pulled the lever to lower interest rates. Well, they pushed the lever up to try to slow it down.
That was
Right.
March of 22, and I used to tell people before March of 22, I'd say the interest rates never go up like this. They go up like this, and they typically go up very
like
slowly.
this, right.
And I couldn't have been more wrong. They went up violently. They went up
Yeah.
quickly, and they put brakes on it. No refinancing
Yeah.
anymore. And now we're out there. A lot of people with these lower rates might not want to move, so all of a sudden we're dealing with what we talked about before, historically low inventory.
Yeah, historically low.
Yeah.
I mean, our inventory is so low that even just in 2019, right before COVID, right? COVID's in 2020. We already had low inventory. We were already really coming down because of all the homes that didn't get built because of the
Right.
crash and because of the very slow recovery. And then all of a sudden, in even 2019, we had multiple offers, right? And our inventory was dropping. So even today, we're still only have 46%. Like we are 46% down in inventory of the number of homes available as just opposed to 2019. Not to mention 2015 and really the 10 years before that, we're used to triple the number of homes that are on the market.
It really is
Right now,
shocking.
there's
Yeah.
2,500 homes on the market on average this past year. We're used to 7,500 and greater.
Wow.
So, they have
Yeah.
low inventory.
So again, giving them the broad picture of the market, it helps lay the groundwork. And again, then we'll get more hyper local whenever I find out exactly what they're looking for.
Right.
And then,
But the question of the day, why
What
do
does it
I
mean?
see
Yes, yeah.
homes that are price reducing or sitting on and others, boom, 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 they're going? Well,
Yeah.
how do you, that's a common question in the,
it is,
right?
yeah. So again, people, if you're Zillow warriors out there, right, you're trying to like do some research yourself before
Right.
you've talked to me. And yeah, that's a common question. It's like, I can't tell why some are selling fast and some are sitting on the market doing price reductions.
What's your
Again,
answer?
that's where a really strong agent comes in play. But I always break it down to this market is super hypersensitive on pricing.
Okay.
So because interest rates are still high and it's expensive to own a home, you're not going to be able to get away as a seller with, foundation issues or busy roads or condition that doesn't match the market. Like if everything else is selling at this price and you're trying to sell at this price, but you're outdated, you're going to sit there.
Right.
So
Because you're already pushing yourself, because people tell me this all the time. Well, rates were 7%, whatever, 10 years ago, 12 years ago. The difference is the price of a home back then
was
was
a
probably
lot lower.
half. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it didn't have, now you've got these high interest rates plus the high prices. So I'm
Right.
pushing myself already. So it makes common sense that
So,
I'm not going to have the money or the time or the resources to put into making those improvements.
so that's why
I
it's
always
sensitive.
so I always just tell people this. Most of the time, whenever we're at this point, it's no longer people talking as much about interest rates because they already know your numbers.
Right.
Mhm.
They're already committed to buying a home. I break it down to this, and it's true pretty much regardless of whatever product. If I'm going to pay this, it has to be what I want.
Right.
So if they have to see the value, I guess is a better way of saying it.
Mm-hmm.
If they're going to pay this much monthly and the house doesn't meet their needs or feels like it's not a good value, there's not a chance they're going to buy it. And those
Right.
sellers are going to have to price reduce because they're not going to be able to get away with it. When money was cheap during COVID, and people are like, yeah, it's not exactly what I want, but
Right.
it wasn't as painful on them to say, hey, I'm committing to doing this and paying this monthly, but I'm not going to do that for this house. So
Right.
that's why
and
you
rates
see
were
that.
low during COVID, and they're not anymore. So, right, the buyers are saying, hey, if I'm going to pay that, it better be all that. Right. And I've been telling sellers this for quite some time now, and the market is very price sensitive. And so there's a lot of new agents in our marketplace, which creates a lot of inexperience, which creates a lot of pricing that gets super high.
I'll tell you what's so cool. You're educating that borrower, and and one thing I like bragging about, Josh, that's above and beyond what I think a lot of real estate agents are doing. You've got that expertise you're bringing to them. You're teaching them, and the more that these buyers are learning, the less apprehensive they're going to be, and the better expectations they're going to have.
And again, it's not even, hey, if I'm paying this, it has to be everything I want. Because again, as we talk about this next section, that's sometimes very tough to do. It's truly just, if I'm paying this, am I getting something that's fair market value or price? Like if they see, hey, this is what I'm paying, but it's fair, it's or even a good price, that's always the goal, or a really good deal, they're fine paying that. But it's whenever they're like, man, I'm paying this, and this doesn't have, everyone else I've looked at has 2 or 3 bathrooms. This one only has 1. Or like, if they feel like this house is lacking and trying to get that top price, it just doesn't work.
This doesn't work. So is overpricing in the market an opportunity?
Absolutely, yeah. So again,
because I know this is one of the things you talk about in this section here.
Yeah. So again, there's always opportunity in every market, right?
Yes.
There's movement.
So how is an overpriced house an opportunity for me as a buyer?
Yeah. So again, it kills a lot of the competition. So they have a lot of buyers in there all rejecting the price. Sellers, a lot of times I feel that they get super anxious. Like and again, it might not be their fault that they priced it bad. It might be the agents. So
sometimes sellers have that expectation that they're going to get a full house of people on the open house, and they're going to have multiple offers. And when they don't get that, it's a big letdown.
Yeah. So if the agent has prepared them for, hey, you're going to get this money or more, and you're going to sell first weekend, and they've had a lot of showings, and it's been nothing but bad feedback, and they're not selling. A lot of times they are very anxious, and so sometimes they're only off, let's just say they're off 10 grand. That's the opportunity to go in 15 to 20 grand lower and maybe get a really good price. And now the sellers are really going to entertain you because you're really the only one that's given them a shot.
And you can avoid the multiple offers of a price reduction once the price reduction happens, which can happen.
Quickly, again, I tell people this all the time. We as a society have gone away from, like, there's not a lot of good negotiators now. Like we're not barterers like we used to be. Like we are, especially my generation, we're shoppers. So it's, hey, is this company going to give me the price that I want it? No. Well, I'm going to go check Amazon and Target and Walmart from my smartphone. I'm not going to go to that store and price match. Like if you heard, price matching is not, they still do it, but it's not like it used to be, because they know, why would I go take the time to price match with you when
just
2 clicks later I can buy it and have it delivered to my door from over here?
And they're taking that mentality into the house shopping.
And so a lot of agents aren't good at negotiating, and the sellers aren't either. So sometimes that gives you that. So the market in whole, they see that house. They might even like that house at the price I'm talking about, but they don't go write an offer. They just wait for a price drop. I like to get ahead of that and say, hey, talk to the agent. I know this one's price dropping. They're super flexible. Let's go put an offer, and let's go back to the old days and try and barter a price.
Awesome. So buyer supply demand, just the old supply and demand is still effective right now, is that we do have very low supply historically, but the market's very sensitive to pricing because rates are high, and these houses have been priced off the highest prices that you can compare them to ever in history, right? So when I go to price a house, if I'm going to put it on the market, I'm looking at the highest priced houses that have sold when I look back just 3 and 6 months before to help you value your home, right? So everything's high, and that's why the market's price sensitive. So great answer to why some things sit and some things don't, and where the opportunities can be, right? So the next phase, and what we're going to do next week, is talk about what makes a good agent, connecting with an agent. What are you looking for in an agent? And should you just walk in the open house or phone call somebody off a listing and just either use them or just use the first person that you run into or talk to? And this is an important piece of it, another reason why a buyer meeting is really important. So we'll talk
Absolutely.
about that next week with Josh. Thanks for joining us, though, today. We hope you learned something about the market and what it's doing. And stick with us next week when we talk about what makes a good agent. See you then.
Thanks.